Hudson Valley Bookkeeping. We specialize in private practice bookkeeping and QuickBooks coaching. In this video, I'm going to explain what necessary steps you should do when you're opening your practice. All right, let's get started. In this video, I'm going to talk about what I see when people open or start their own practice. And you may have been subcontracting for a while and now you're no longer an employee and you're in this realm of you have to run a business and you're not completely sure what you should be doing. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen and show this little document I made up, and we'll kind of go over all of the things that you need to do. Well, first off, you have to create your entity. Just thinking out loud, right? So I don't give legal advice, but I have yet to meet someone who did either create an LLC or a PLLC or PC. So those things you need to speak to an attorney and get advice on, but you need to be not just you anymore. Okay, so you did that. Now you need to get a bank account. I have in here, get 2 accounts at 2 different banks. And why do I say that? Because last year, a couple of banks went under, and I actually had clients at First Republic and that bank went under. And luckily Chase rescued that bank, but apparently it's 1929 again, and you really shouldn't leave all your money at one bank account. Other reasons why, even if the bank doesn't go under, if you have fraud at one bank, your account could potentially be frozen, and it could be days or weeks before you get access to that money. A woman that actually designed my kitchen was telling me about that. She had fraud on her checking accounts, and someone was like trying to wire out of it, and all of this stuff happened. And she said she literally had no money. And thank goodness her parents and family gave them money while they waited for their money to be unfrozen. So that really can happen. So if you're at 2 different banks, even if you primarily use one, but you have a backup safety net, the second bank, you're covered. And it's kind of, anything like that, right? So get 2 different bank accounts, and we'll talk more about credit card processing in a minute, but it is good because then, if you try and do disaster planning ahead and you have that, then if something were to happen, you have other money to live on in between that. Regarding bank accounts, I am at a local credit union. I live in the Hudson Valley. I'm at a local credit union in the Hudson Valley, which is an area of New York. And then I'm at Chase. And I am quite particular. I really like Chase because you could be anywhere in the country and probably find one. They have some of the best banking for bookkeeping, meaning if you at some point decide to hire an outside bookkeeper, they're the easiest to set up an outside user and give view only access. They can also do that with your personal account. And I have not found any other banking institution that allows for view only. So even if, for any other reason, maybe you have an elderly parent or something, it's just a really good bank. Okay. So I really recommend you get 2 banks. You just siphon or move a certain amount of money into that as a, plan B. I've really had a lot of, even recently last summer, medical practice, very large oral surgery practice, have their banks frozen from fraud. And it took quite a while to get that taken care of. Luckily, they did have 2 bank accounts. They also were with the local bank, and they were funneling their money, which I do too. They were funneling their money through 2 different processing things. And so they still had access to plenty of money, thank goodness, at their local bank. So it does happen. I've seen it. If you just do it in the beginning when you're getting all of this admin stuff out of the way, you'll just thank me one day, maybe. Okay, credit card. This, you don't need to get 2 credit cards. Just have one. And a lot of times it's hard to get a credit card in a business name when you're first starting out. So just apply for a new card or take a card with no balance that's even in your personal name. It doesn't matter. and you use that only for business. Not a single personal thing should go on this. Okay. No personal charges. This is completely and totally only for business. So that's what your business bank account and your business credit card, even if it's a personal one, you should get. I would recommend getting one with cash back. That's usually the best. Like it gives you like a percentage back. And then you can take that percentage and apply it toward paying down the card, or you could also do the travel. I wrote Basque. Not wearing my glasses. Okay. Okay. So now you got your, you can do that entity thing from LegalZoom. I see that a lot, and it's very cost effective. And you don't have to go through a lawyer. But again, I'm not giving legal advice. So you have to figure out your entity type and so forth. You're going to open your bank accounts. You're going to get a credit card that you're not going to put one single personal charge on. And you're not going to, again, even when you get a checking account, you can have a debit card. Again, you're not going to do anything personal in these accounts. This has to be completely business only. Okay. It'll make your life so much easier when you get to bookkeeping, which we're not even talking about in this. Okay. So then next thing you have is accounting systems. So there's Zoho and Xero, and then there's QuickBooks. And I won't say anything bad about any program, but the only one I recommend is QuickBooks. I've tried everything. People come to me and ask me and tell me they started in a certain program and could I try it out? And usually after 30 days, I recommend that we just completely switch to QuickBooks. Unfortunately, right now, QuickBooks is like the only real game in town. They put a lot of money into their product, and there really is no competition to them in the market. I was just at a conference, and that was the consensus with all of the bookkeepers at the conference, that there wasn't really any reason to work in the other products because they weren't at the same level. Okay, why else is QuickBooks good? It allows you to grow. So you can start at the lower level and then you can move up. So let me just pause this for a second and we'll just clip it out. Right now, as a solo, and I'm making this video for someone who's a solo. If you're a one person, but you could become, in 5 years, you could be hiring people, you could have all kinds of other things going on. But right now, you would start out with Simple Start. We're talking, you have one location, you're not going to need a lot of extra features. And this one allows you to have 2 accountants. And so it's basically going to cost you, it shows $17.50, but it's really going to be $35 per month. Remember that you cannot invoice in QuickBooks because it is not HIPAA compliant. But I would really, really say, get your activity into QuickBooks so that in 3 years from now, you can tell how you are doing, right? Okay, so this is what I would recommend, and I would do Simple Start. Okay. The other thing is, and why I say it allows you to grow, is that, and if you're starting out and you already maybe do want to have an employee or think you're going to have an employee at some point, payroll, Intuit QuickBooks has a payroll in it. So it's another add-on, but it's built inside of the QuickBooks. And I would recommend that versus going with Gusto. There's some lower fee ones, but I wouldn't bother because it runs so quick and easy inside of QuickBooks. And the second thing is one of the biggest bookkeeping mistakes of all time, even by some quote unquote bookkeepers, is posting payroll journals correctly. And if you run your payroll inside of QuickBooks, your payroll will always be correct as long as you don't go and delete it or something. So you'll save hours of bookkeeping headaches by having your payroll inside of QuickBooks. My company uses QuickBooks Premier, I think. You want the better one. And I've been using it since 2016. And I think it's easier than any of the big payroll companies, and they have very good phone support. So again, if you think at any time you're going to end up hiring an actual real W-2 employee, QuickBooks is great because then it's so easy to add in the payroll. Okay. Okay, so you picked an accounting system. Like I said, there is Zoho and Xero. And you could look those up. And then you've got to choose your EHR, right? So there's a lot of options out there on that one. And I think that is really, you really have to go and, do the free trial, try it out. And it mostly depends on what you're looking for. And sometimes I talk to people and they're actually using two different systems or three. I have a client that has three. One, because I think one, she's waiting for the contract to end. But there's usually things that you want specifically that one may have and another may not. I'll just show you a couple that I know of my current clients using, and they might be ones to look into. So Theranest, I had a really big practice that sold, and they used Theranest, and I liked Theranest. That was great. That was pretty easy. And I was only in there, they had a biller who did all the billing. It was a very large practice. And we would tie out and create reports, per provider. And I felt it was very simple to work in. And they left Therabill. Where did I put that one? They were at Therabill. And the biller at this practice didn't really understand why they had to leave there. She liked it too. So I think there's different features that some people like better than others, right? And that are maybe easier than others. So you kind of have to play around with them, because I even have a psychiatrist who is our current client. And one of my bookkeepers went and did like 5 demos. And in the end, he just stuck to the way he's doing it. And, because we couldn't find anything that made it exactly what he was. And his current system was working fine because he was seeing people on site and they just paid him right then. So he didn't really have the need for this. But so we have Therabill. Then there's that big one. It's like Practice Fusion. So, and they are giving you trials, but there's so much going on. The one thing I would do too is, if you're in any groups, it would be good to ask people like, why do you like yours? Which one are you using? Why do you not like yours? Right. I do find that a lot of people have more than one because of certain instances. Like one person I was talking about, she said, well, a lot of the features in this one thing I'm using aren't working because I only work with children and I can't blah, blah, blah. Right. So if you are in a group of any sort, like an online group or a mastermind or a weekly meeting, I would ask people what they are using, because that could be helpful. Let's see, which was this? Simple Practice. A lot of people like Simple Practice. Okay. I think the most important part is when they can, if it has a HIPAA compliant billing and the scheduling, because even for me, for anything I do, I really don't want to email back and forth to someone about what time. I would love to be able to go into a calendar and book. Okay. But let's talk again that sometimes they may talk about integrating like your EHR with your QuickBooks. Never do it. It's always a disaster. I've made a fortune on disconnecting those and fixing all the issues that happen with that. So just never connect them. They just, that thought process doesn't work. Okay. Credit card processing. So get two, just like you have 2 bank accounts, and link one to one bank account and link one to the other bank. And then always test, charge your own credit card, and make sure the money actually goes in the bank. I had this like 20 years ago. One of my clients was a restaurant and he switched from one processor to another and they didn't do any testing. And it took like 2 weeks for him to get all of his money because it didn't go into the right bank account. So I personally didn't think he should have canceled the other one until he tested it, but he didn't. And then he had no money because all of the meals he sold, all that money got lost or went into someone else's account. So because when you get the processor, you've got to like enter your routing and your checking. So you're going to want to do that And then you're going to charge yourself, send test payments, and make sure it works before you let anyone, especially like through your EHR, right? You're gonna have to link your account, enter the information. But I would always have a second processor. Like I do most of my billing through QuickBooks, and that goes to my local bank. But then when I do QuickBooks coaching, I do those through Square, and that goes to my Chase account. And this just one, again, I just build up a nice buffer of money in my backup bank. So that's just kind of like a business tip. Every business should do that. Okay. So when should you hire a biller? I know a lot of people do their own billing, and that's great. That's fine. But when you should hire a biller is when you're not getting your bills out. So if you are getting so overwhelmed, right, and you're not getting the bills out, then there's no point in working if you're not billing for it. So that would be the time. It's tough finding a good biller. It's like finding a good bookkeeper. So, you've got to either figure out how to make it easier or figure out your schedule that, so that is definitely a priority. You always need to make your billing your second priority. First your patient, then your billing. Okay. And then at a certain point, you're going to probably want to hire a bookkeeper. So when do you know that is time? So if you're spending your nights and weekends trying to keep up with it, or if you consistently year after year find out like in September and you're trying to file for October 15th extension, you still haven't done it, then you just need to admit to yourself that bookkeeping isn't your thing. The other thing is most people can be taught bookkeeping and they can be taught QuickBooks, but if this is like your second job now, then it's not really owning a business if now you're having to work this second shift trying to figure out and become an accountant. So that's kind of when you decide that. If you're not really making a lot of money yet and you're just starting out, you'll have to figure it out, right? Like usually you need to be at a certain income level when it makes sense because really good bookkeepers aren't cheap, but they'll be worth every dollar because you will have really good financials and a tax return that works. Okay. Now we're into the operations of the business. Pay everything you can with your credit card. And I'll explain why. First of all, you're going to get points or cash back. And then the most important part is, again, not being an accountant. This way, if you pay people with a credit card, you won't have to submit a 1099. So in general, when you're operating as a business at the year end, anybody that you subcontract or you pay, you need to send a 1099 for your rent, and you need to send a 1099 to people that you subcontract. But if they accept credit cards, and anyone that you can pay with a credit card, they then get the credit card from the credit card processing company, and your obligation is now non-existent. So it just makes life so much easier because if you're already trying to figure out how to open a new business, how to do bookkeeping, and now you have to do tax forms, that's just a whole second thing. And the last thing, make sure you get a real business email and don't use a Gmail. Okay. First of all, you just look a lot more professional. And second of all, you can store all your business things in one place. I mean, I guess you could, but there's things that you're going to be responsible for, like saving every receipt, right? If you have business email that is specifically and only for the business, anything you buy and like you get an email with a receipt, it should be there. So one, you're like kind of siphoning your life of private practice into one specific spot. And I would really recommend the G Suite. That's what we use at my company. And the reason why is it has such a great drive where you could save. You have to check about like HIPAA compliant saving. I don't know. But you can save all of anything in that drive and you can download it onto your computer. So it's just like a whatever. And if you use Mac, which a lot of my private practice people do, again, you have the drive, Google Sheets, Word docs, but mostly you can just save everything there. So And it really does look better than if you're using it for each email. I mean, therapy is not, inexpensive, and people really want to feel that, the person they're hiring, it's same for me, right? So people want to hire a bookkeeper that they feel has a true business. So I think if you do those things, you should be set up. The other thing to think about too, if you're doing virtual or non-virtual, what I see a lot of people doing, and I'm sure you know this, but just in case you don't, is that you can often rent spaces just for the day or a couple of hours to see your patients. And they're all over the country. You can find those. Um, and that's another like way to, if you're, wherever you're seeing people, or maybe now people do want to meet in person. And for the longest time, you've been able to just Zoom with people. And now they're insisting that they meet with you and you're not sure. Here's for one instance in New York City. It's called Therapy Hive. And again, it's offices that you can, they have on-demand options. And I'm sure they have these, in other places around the country. I also see you can look on Craigslist. And a lot of times there are um, small offices offered for rent. So you could look into that. Even when I used to be at a Regis, which is they're like an office space, right? They're another one that when I first was at Regis, like I had a regular lease with a nice office, but there were some mental health practitioners there. So here you could rent an office for a certain amount of hours, certain amount of days, and that could help you with the office space issue. Especially if you're starting out, you might only need 2 days a week or something for on site. So if these are some options for, you know, and I like this, taking the isolation out of private practice. Okay, so we're going to say find an office space when it's time. And it could be, very small, and you can work into having, more space as you need it. You don't have to get a full blown lease. Like usually commercial leases are 5 years. There are these other options. And like I said, on Craigslist, I've seen so many times um, for like very non-committed small one room offices. And again, if you find another person to share that space with or work that out, can also cut down on the cost. But as we're kind of moving out of COVID, I am hearing that things are going back to on-site. A lot of my clients had given up some of their offices in New York City at the time because everything was so virtual and it's so expensive in Manhattan to have office space. But now that is changing and people are going back and releasing. So that's just something going on in the market. So I hope these help kind of give you a little roadmap as to what what you're in for and the things. What I hear a lot of people say when in bookkeeping over the last 25 years is nobody told me, but there's this onus on you to make sure you are researching things. So you're watching this video, so that means you are trying to figure out what you have to do, right? And I think if you start with these steps, you will have a good foundation. I mean, the biggest thing is not breaking HIPAA compliance in my part. Like our company, we're all HIPAA certified. So these are things to think about, but just really making sure that that's all taken care of and that you don't use your accounting system in any way with patient names or billing. So that's why you could not use QuickBooks for your billing, is that it's not HIPAA compliant. So our company, Hudson Valley Bookkeeping, offers bookkeeping for private practices, specifically the smaller ones. And we also do QuickBooks coaching, and that is with me. So if you have any questions, you can send it. I have the email listed below and our phone number. All right. Have a great day.